Tonight we will examine concepts that may challenge your perception of the world around you. Strange creatures, chilling tales, and the occasional conspiracy. Here on our show, we will attempt to provide you with paranormal insight. Welcome everyone to the show. Tonight we have, ladies and gentlemen, Vikki Franklin and her dad, Ken Franklin. Let's go over who you guys are and what you do.
Okay. Well,
what you did.
I'm Vikki. I was on a TV show about 15 years ago called Psychic Kids. I wrote into the show myself, and they responded back, and they started really quickly. They sent out a producer, and she came and filmed at our house for about 2 days, and they sent us to Boston for this show. Yeah.
That's really quick and easy, but actually, she didn't tell us any of this stuff that was happening. And so I received a cold call in the middle of the afternoon asking, hey, can we have your daughter on a TV show that she asked to be on? Dogs are destroying things in the background.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
And so I said, okay. And so that's kind of how we first connected with them. And then, like she said, they sent a producer out and they did videoing, and she's had lots of adventures after that.
So it really all started though because we saw this show Psychic Kids, and they said, do you know a psychic child? And I thought, well, I know a psychic child. I am a psychic child.
Right.
And they had asked what my experiences were and why they thought that I would be a good match for the show. And I told them, some creepy stories from when I was about 3 or 4 years old, and just went from there.
Okay. Well, okay, let's go back to Psychic Kids real quick and what it was. It was a TV show hosted by Chip Coffey, who was a well-known psychic. Well-known. He's still around, right?
Yeah, he still does all kinds of stuff. He's doing I think he's doing some other shows, I think, for Travel Channel currently. I know he was on a show with Josh Gates.
Okay.
That went really well. And we've been to one of his seminars, and it was great. The person that ended up being my mentor for the show was Chris Fleming.
Okay, so Chip. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Chris was your primary on that show. I can't remember if he was actually in the episode or not.
Yeah.
He was, yes.
Okay.
So
Chip was not in the episode.
Chip, well, he kind of did the narration or the general intros first, right? No,
he so for the second season, the first season it was all Chip.
Okay.
Second season is when they brought in, I think it was Chip, Chris, and I think another psychic that they were using as a mentor.
Okay.
So Chris, I thought originally it was going to be Chip, but
right.
Chris was a pleasant surprise. He was great and very helpful too.
Okay.
And I'm still in contact with him as well.
Excellent. That's fantastic. I'm glad you guys kept in touch. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, let's briefly step back. Vikki's a psychic and Ken's the dad.
Yes, I can do that.
I don't know. No, does Dad have any psychic abilities?
None. Mom, yes.
Okay.
Brother, yes. Dad, absolutely zilch.
Gotcha. Okay, so the initial call to Dad was because of an age check, because you were like 15, 16 at the time?
Yeah,
right?
I was.
Okay.
I think I was 15 when I wrote in. I think by the time we started filming, I was 16. 18.
Gotcha.
When they called me back, I was the first kid that they ever wanted to come back, which was, really nice.
That's always nice.
Yeah, so I was also on the 3rd season. So I did season 2, I believe I was the last episode.
Yes.
And then season 3, I think I was the first episode.
No, it's the other way around.
Or it was the other way around.
She was their debut show for the 2nd season, and their swan song on the 3rd season.
At least you were there to say goodbye.
Yes.
The second time I didn't need Dad with me because he was I was 18.
Okay, gotcha. You write the show, and the show calls you back, and they say yes to you because why? Give me some specifics. What'd you tell them?
All right. So when I wrote in, I explained to them one of my creepier stories was when I was about 3 years old. I asked my mom if I could have the big girl bed that was in my room. And she asked me, and because I had a toddler bed, and she asked me, what big girl bed do you have in your room? And I said, the one with the sunflower quilt. And she, said, oh, okay. And that was the end of that until a few years later, she said, you really scared me with that. I asked her why, and she said when they were viewing the house, the bedroom that I was in was a sewing room and had a little daybed in it that had a sunflower quilt.
Ah, neat.
He wasn't born yet.
No, I was not born yet.
Wow, that's impressive. You looked into Mom's mind.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Okay.
I don't even remember it exactly how I thought. I don't know if it was a dream or if I just had an image in my head of what the room looked like. A lot of my abilities stem from seeing things that I've never seen before, in the sense that things that used to be where I am now.
Gotcha.
Or that kind of thing.
She apparently remembers trips to Disneyland that she was never on.
What, was she in the womb at the time, or?
He has remember when we did this? And we're going, Vikki, you weren't with us then.
Was that from when she was remembering things her mom saw?
Who knows?
Who
knows what she? It's stuff. It would be stuff that was so obscure. It wouldn't be something like we took pictures of it and showed it to her, or
Gotcha.
anything like that. Strange experiences that, incidental things that we would have happen to us. She'd have a memory of.
Yeah.
And
she wasn't there. Like she wasn't born yet, wasn't there.
Because, initially we're going, oh yeah, that was when we did this and this and this. And then we think about it for a little bit, like, well, she wasn't there. How would she know?
And when you say wasn't there, just to confirm, she hadn't been born yet.
Yes.
So if it's not precognition, it's
postcognition.
Well, postcognition would be, yeah, that's interesting. Precognition, I don't know.
Clairvoyance. You can see the future.
No.
No, it's like you're seeing through someone else's eyes and recollecting another person's past in your brain.
Exactly. Yeah. And then when I was younger, I did see spirits. I wasn't sure what they were. My mind at the time kind of decided that it was just Peter Pan, because I was seeing shadows in my room. And, little bodies moving around my bedroom, which incidentally ended up being the same thing that my brother had described to my parents when he was younger as well.
Wow.
These little shadow people. And
hold on, let me pause. Let me time out you right there. Little shadow people. What are we talking about? 3 foot high? 2 foot high?
Oh, I'd say about 3 or 4.
Okay.
Feet. Yeah.
Just jamming around?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I never really thought anything of it. I just decided it was Peter Pan, and Mom told me, you can say hi to them, and if you don't want them there, you just tell them, I don't want you here right now, and they go away.
Okay.
So that was pretty much the beginning of it. I would get overwhelming feelings in certain parts of the house. I would, in the hallway in front of my bedroom, I would get very, very sad all of a sudden. And I told my mom about this, and I said, I feel like there was a boy that was a teenager, and I feel like he's really, really sad. And unbeknownst to me at the time, the previous owners, their son had passed away in a drowning at, I think, his high school senior party.
Oh, wow.
And so Mom had told me about that, and I could agree with her that it really just felt like grief and grieving in that section of the house. And there were other parts of the house that I just didn't like going to.
Gotcha.
Whether they were spirits of somebody that had passed away or just residual feelings, or something else entirely. I think there are some things out there that aren't, I don't want to say that they're not human, but they're not human, and they're just kind of, sometimes they're just awful. Awful feelings, just awfulness.
Right.
And I would get that feeling around the house as well. And so it was a very interesting emotional time growing up for me. But yeah, so as a child, really, I was just very sensitive. I didn't, our family is very spiritual in general. So it was never really oh, you're a special kid kind of a thing. It was just, oh, that's just normal. That's okay. You're just having special feelings today, though. So,
Gotcha. Okay, let me stop you there too, Ken. So you're involved with a woman who was psychic. Did you know this from the jump when you first got into the relationship?
Not really. Not really. It's just normal stuff. Like, you have a feeling somebody's going to call, and she calls, and my wife and I have a really tight connection that way. And talk about Vikki, she calls, that kind of stuff. But that is the type of thing we expected. We would have, when Bernice and I were just, starting out, we never thought the kids were going to be strange.
For example, the way that they found out that my mom was pregnant with me was my brother came up to my mom, I guess in the middle of the night, and said, "Mommy, there's a person standing in your tummy."
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. How old was he then?
He was probably about 6 or so. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Impressive.
Standing in your tummy. And we thought, that's kind of odd.
That's creepy.
Okay.
Yeah.
But she knew she was pregnant, but he didn't know.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So let me
but nothing really, oh my gosh, I've got a psychic child, until we got the calls.
The calls?
Well, yeah, from the producer.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay. So
I had to do her audition tape and all that stuff.
Oh, right on. And you have a background in film, we should say.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
So I had to make sure. Yeah, so this is my perspective from this stuff. We had the producer came and was going to do the videos of her that you see at the beginning of the show, of her playing with the dog and walking around and stuff. And when she came over, the first thing she said when she went into Vikki's room was, "Oh my God, you've got all the lighting and sound stuff that I need. I never see that when I go anywhere."
You were ready, Ken.
Yeah, I was ready.
So we already have a background in the creepy, because he does special effects makeup for horror films, and we've done a couple of music videos or commercials here or there. And of course, we do the haunted houses.
Yes, that's awesome. That's where we know each other from.
Exactly.
So we have a history together with Stuart, who was on the show last week.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, I started with gyros back in, I guess it was 92 or
91 or 92.
No, not 91. 92 or 3. I don't know.
You're remembering his thoughts again.
Yeah.
And then we hooked up with you guys and Stuart and all that later. And then I saw your podcast and I said, hey, you'll be interested in this one.
Yeah. Well, I was aware of Vikki's abilities only like I started doing the paranormal investigation in 2009. And it was, and I didn't even know about Vikki or her abilities until we started hanging out more, I think, because I said, oh, I do that too. That's not the psychic stuff, and that was like 2014, 2015, something like that.
Yeah, back in early Goblin Glen days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
probably.
so it was earlier than that. Okay.
And we tried, the ghost hunting and all that stuff, but it's really never worked out to be
I
your
am
thing.
the equipment.
Yeah, you are.
I am the equipment.
Let me tread back here real quick. So,
Yeah.
Ken, you have your wife who has psychic abilities, your children
Mhm.
who have psychic abilities. When you're raising a kid with these abilities, is it different than, say, some mundane child out there? Nothing against my mundane audience. I'm just saying.
Well, in hindsight, I can remember things that uh, they're more sensitive to. They wouldn't like to go places. They would like to go other places. They'd have strange
Yeah.
panic sort of attacks when they're in some place, and we couldn't attribute that to anything other than just kids, being a little
Yeah.
unusual sometimes, unpredictable,
Okay.
and so you can associate some stuff that we can remember with possibly being tied to that sensitivity.
Yeah. And I remember being younger and older buildings. I had a hard time with older buildings sometimes because I would get feelings of what this looked like, who was here, what happened here,
Oh,
the good and the bad.
okay.
So, doing the ghost walks, like we went to San Francisco and we did one of the haunted San Francisco tours, and that was great. But there were some buildings that I just didn't want to go anywhere near, just the overwhelming feelings of awful that came off of some of those buildings.
Gotcha.
San Francisco in general is a pretty hard place for me. My only guess on that would be perhaps because of the earthquake.
The big one, the 1906 one.
Yeah.
Right. And the 89 one too. That was pretty horrific.
Yeah. And the whole Manson thing and
That's
that
true.
kind of
That's
stuff.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just to shift it a little bit, getting back to the psychic kids thing. It wasn't just a reality show for her. I mean, that was a great opportunity. We had a great time and all that on it. But with Chris's help, she had a chance to talk with people and kids her own age that were sensitive also. And this was like one of the first shows where they had teens on it. They always had kids, really, really young kids on it. So this was the first where they paired up a pair of teenagers.
Yeah.
And they taught them how to use this skill, how to call it up, how to be aware of it and not scared of it. And that's what this whole show was about. I mean, I was a little worried of it being a reality show, how they fake stuff on the reality shows.
Yeah.
And this one it was good. I mean, it was everything you see happened. And none of it was prepped. None of it was set up in any way. And it was a kind of perspective changer for me, because I'm total skeptic of all of this stuff. That's the way.
Wait, hold on. You're a skeptic of all this, and you had a psychic family?
I come from a science background, and so everything I have to have it proven. And I've been keeping an open mind and everything, and all. And you think, well, I don't know, this looks like drama to me, and
Okay.
stuff you can't prove, and all this.
I'm with you. Go ahead.
Then sitting back and watching this one and her partner on there and Chris, I mean, they took the parents away, and we were just kind of in the backgrounds and all. We weren't with them when they did their little spooky ventures and things. And but we, in some cases, were on headsets and things and watching it that way and all. And it was all real. I mean, it was all happening. None of it was faked. And that impressed me. And what impressed me more was, as a skeptic, the stuff they didn't show, because they show the things that really stand out, are watchable to a Joe average viewer.
Right.
But when you're sitting around a room and you're listening to a what do they call them?
I don't know what it was called.
Whatever.
It's like a radio feedback. it goes through different radio channels.
It's Spirit Box. Spirit Box.
Yes.
Chris was using that, and he wasn't getting the responses he was expecting to hear based on the story they were trying to solve. And so he stopped at one point and he said, I've got to do some tests to see if there's really anything, listening to us. And so he puts this thing out in the middle of the room and he says, if there's anybody listening, please name the people in this room. Now, I couldn't name the people in the room. I mean, I knew the kids and I knew Chris, but there was a guest psychic there and some other people. And I can't believe it. I mean, I'm standing right there and these voices came out of the box and named off every single person in that room.
Crazy.
And slowly in different voices each time. And the last one was hilarious because, well, it said Ken, there's a very short thing you could hear, but her partner is Travis. And it didn't come across as Travis. It came across in two voices, Travis.
Oh.
And we're all just kind of like, wow.
That's impressive. Yeah.
And that was something that kind of just opened my eyes to, okay, maybe something's going on here because nobody's sitting there, twiddling with this thing. It's just sitting out in the middle of the room.
Gotcha.
Well, and the other thing for him too was that we've got producers all around the room surrounding Travis and Chris and I sitting at a table, and we're in a historic building. And they're saying, all right, now, just first words that come into your head, first words that pop up, let us know. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to think of names, and I'm putting out names and I'm putting out scenarios of what different rooms in the building might have been used as. And you look over at the producers and they have a clipboard with, the history of the building, and they're looking at us and they're looking at the other producers going, oh, whoa.
Check. Right down the line.
It's not often that you get to freak out the people that are working on the actual show that are, supposed to be used to this. They even had, they didn't put this on TV, but they had me do a reading on Chris. And I told him, well, I don't know, because I don't know if what I'm saying, if this is, accurate or not. And he said, well, I'll tell you if it's accurate, but I'm not going to give you any hints about my life or anything. And so I just started talking about his childhood, and he's blown away. I can't repeat half of it because I don't think it's stuff that he wants out there, but he was blown away and he was asking questions about his parents. And I told him that for one of his parents, an impression that I got was that there was this book, this very important book that seemed like maybe the only book on the bookshelf. And it seemed, small, mundane, but told him there's a red book on this bookshelf and this is the color blanket that's on the chair with your parent. And he said, yeah, it's the only book.
That's awesome.
We did that again when after the show, I don't know, we'll talk about it probably in a little bit, when she started helping out the police department.
I do want to talk about the police department. We'll do that in the next segment. Let me talk to you about, I had a psychic experience about 2009. And it was basically a prelude to me actually doing this work as a paranormal investigator. And I've told the other listeners about this, where I was put into a trance-like state. And basically, it was for me to confront my fear of spirits, because I thought they'd all be standing there with axes in their head, dripping blood. Classic horror movie stuff, right? At the end of that session, we're out in a wooded area in a backyard, or some acreage or something. And I see the first spirit I've seen since I was 3 years old. And it's a human outline, and it's peeking around a bush. Never mind, I can see its full form even through the bush. And it's got like a white outline. It's fuzzy. Like a Gaussian blur, if you prefer, Ken. That's for you. And it's filled with like a staticky TV snow kind of a vibe, and it wasn't scary at all. And it threw rocks at me.
I'm so pleased that you describe it that way, because a lot of people, I think, get this weird idea of what a ghost would look like, and perhaps it's different for everybody, but for
that's exactly what I was going into. It's like, what do you see? Have you seen the spooky horror ghost, or do you see what I see?
Never seen a spooky horror ghost, never seen a guy standing in my window with an axe yet.
Good. Good.
However, I have seen some full formed ones that I didn't know that they were ghosts at the time. I was very young at the time when I had seen that. However, when I got older, the way that I see them now is the way you've described it. And I think of it kind of like when you look into the sun and that sunspot that you get behind your eyes afterwards, that kind of ultraviolet-y kind of light. I get that, but as an outline. Or
interesting.
Like not even quite a glow or anything, but almost like that, like a camera flashes in your eye and what's left over. I see them like that, but in a shape, or almost sometimes a little bit staticky, but depending on who it is, it can be pretty bright or not. That's how I've always seen them, or is just a shadow in general.
I've seen a shadow once on a case, and it was not a pleasant shadow. Just so you know.
That's the interesting thing too, because as I got older and I heard other people's experiences, nobody's had a good experience with a shadow. That's what was running around my room when I was a kid. So it's like, oh, maybe that was a good thing, but I never had a bad experience.
That's good.
With any shadows. I did get an ominous feeling one time when I was younger. It was probably about 6 years old, and I woke up suddenly and I sat up, and I thought I was dreaming, but there was a big shadow at the foot of my bed, and it wasn't even a human shape or anything. It was almost like not an arch. Yeah, like an arch, just a rounded thing standing at the bed. I felt like I was being looked at, but there were no eyes or anything.
A doll was at the end of your bed? I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I thought there were goblins under my bed for sure. But I pulled the blanket up and I tried to see, maybe if I do this and I pull my blanket back, it'll go away. And I did that, and it didn't go away, and it didn't do anything, just standing there. And then about 2 seconds later, an earthquake hit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Huh. So that was my only real experience with like a big shadowy thing.
Gotcha.
And I've never really been able to figure that one out at all.
Sounds like an omen to me.
Yeah.
Mothman.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what it was. I didn't have anybody that was a spirit type relative at the time that would have been there. Later, when my grandma passed away, I would see her all the time.
Oh wow.
Her. That wasn't abnormal for me, but yeah, the shadow thing was weird.
Gotcha. You Ken mentioned in the background Mothman. That's where I want to take Vikki next to Virginia.
I've crocheted so many Mothmen at this point that I feel really.
Do you really? That's funny. Okay.
No, that's a story that creeps me out too.
It's a freaky story, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the movie does a really good job of depicting all that stuff, I think. If you ever seen the Mothman prophecies?
I haven't, but I've watched a lot of like different documentaries where they've interviewed some of the witnesses, and they all have such similar eyewitness views of, the woman who was driving on the bridge or was about to drive on the bridge and saw this thing there, and she wasn't the only one.
Yep.
It's like, whoa.
That's crazy, isn't it?
No, thank you.
Here's a quick word from our sponsors. The Seekers of California for Ethereal Research and Investigation. We investigate hauntings, cryptids, UFOs, and offer cleansing and clearing. Don't get scared, call Scary. Serving the greater San Jose area and beyond. Call us at 408 320 8467. That's 408 320 8467. Scary Paranormal Investigations. And now, back to the show. So let's talk about your help with the local police service.
Yeah. So basically, what happened was on the TV show, they had us working on a missing persons case that was already pretty much a cold case that we got to experience working with a private investigator, and we got some pretty cool information out of that. When the TV show came out, it caught the attention of a local police department, and the sergeant gave me a call, or he reached out to the private investigator actually, and he reached out to me and said, "Hey, can you give this guy a call?" And I did. And Sergeant asked if I would like to come in sometime and, work on first it was he asked if I wanted to come in and work on a current missing persons case. Current as in like a day before current.
Very fresh.
Wow.
And I said, yes. And he said, what do you need from me? And I said, just a picture and a name. That's it. So he sent that information over using basically what I had learned from Chris, which is no matter how stupid it sounds, write it down. Whatever you're thinking, write it down. And so I started writing down some real random words. Didn't make sense to me. And I just assumed, well, hopefully it'll make sense to somebody else.
Right.
and so I went with it. I filled out a whole page of words. I sent the picture to the sergeant, and he said, I'm going to call you back.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, okie dokie then. I did something wrong. And an hour later, he said, all right, so I'm on so-and-so street, which was one of the random names that I had thrown out on there. He said, I'm on so-and-so street. I went to the first greenhouse, which I had written down. And I talked to the woman that answered the door, and her name was a name that I had written down. And
wow.
She said her husband works for the school, which is something that I had written down.
Wow. Check.
Yeah, check. And it's all in order too.
Oh man.
And he said, I'm talking to her. Yeah, her husband works for the school, and he had seen her talking to so-and-so at school. And so we're going to bring in that kid and see if she knows anything.
Okay.
So I'm at home just absolutely chuffed that I've done something correctly and that something made sense to somebody else. And he called me back the next day and said, all right, so we've, interviewed a few other people. What else can we talk about? And also, is it okay if I come pick you up? And we do a little drive around. And I said, sure, can my dad come? And he said, of course. So
you're still a kid.
Yeah, he asked how much I wanted to be paid. And I said, well, I like cheeseburgers. So as long as you feed me, I'm good to go. And
that's awesome.
So he came and he picked us up, and we got to drive around the area. And he's like, okay, now you direct me. Just tell me where to go and I'll go there. And I said, okay, so I'm directing him. I'm awful at directions. I don't know where we are. I've never ventured this far. Yeah, I've never ventured this far into this town. And so I'm just telling him, okay, well, I'll get my feelings for this, or maybe I'm making this up. I don't know. And then suddenly I point at a house and I go, that house. Something about that house is related to this case. And he goes, Stone Face. All right. And we drive away and we get back to the station. Or no, sorry, we get back to...
Don't forget the guy standing in the driveway.
Yes, there was a guy standing in the driveway glaring at us.
Of that house, the one you pointed to?
Yeah. And so we actually end up reconvening at a Starbucks. And he says, so I need to tell you something. That was her house.
Ooh.
Yes.
The missing girl's house?
Yes.
Okay.
And I said, oh, okay. And after seeing the house and getting a few more impressions off of that, I was able to tell she's not dead. This is not a case of somebody being murdered. This is somebody that has left on of her own free will, but is no longer being.
She doesn't want to be there anymore.
Yes, it's no longer a safe situation. I gave him a couple of other impressions that I had gotten about where she might be, and I tried to kind of use the feelings that I would get where I can kind of get an impression of where somebody is and kind of see their surroundings. All I could see was a haze and a green carpet, and that's it. And that was weird for me because normally I can see, oh, I'm sitting in a house and there's this many windows and this is what the floor and the ceiling and everything looks like. But all I could get was that there was a green carpet, and the word Cisco kept coming up over and over again in my head. Cisco.
Well, Cisco, like the computer company.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know this at the time, but apparently Cisco is a really cheap alcoholic beverage that you can get at the liquor store.
Gotcha.
And so the sergeant was able to he told me that, and I was like, oh, maybe she's drunk, I don't know. So I told him, I don't think she's dead, and I think that she's not in a safe situation, but I do think that she'll come home in probably about 3 days. She'll probably reach out on her own and come home. 3 days later, I got a call, and he said, yep, she reached out. She was staying at a women's shelter, and we went and picked her up.
Oh, at a women's shelter. What was going on at the house?
So she had left school one day, basically, went off with some guy that she met, and he took her off about maybe 3 hours away.
No, he took her to Culver City.
Golly, that's far from.
She forgot a detail that I remember as an adult because she would describe a point in traveling that she thought that the girl had gone through, and it matched the road between the Bay Area and Morro Bay. There's some road there. She described that perfectly. So the impression I got was that they had gone south, but there were no other clues. It just sounded like that. Then when this part where she had said she was going to call back, because everybody was getting concerned. A few days had gone by, and they asked her if she had any other impressions about where she was, and that's when she said, "Don't worry about it. She's going to call you." And sure enough, within a day, she did call, and she was in Culver City, and so they went down and picked her up.
I think that's okay to say she was in Culver City.
No, but that's impressive, though. I mean, you picked up a landmark.
Yes,
on the way south, which is nice.
I was able to tell them, obviously I didn't know. I said there's a building called the Goose something. Or the Swan
what?
Something.
The what?
Goose,
that's right, the Swan.
Goose or the Swan.
Oh, Goose. Okay, got you.
Yeah, and it turned out the woman's shelter she was staying at was called, I think, the Swan. And
gotcha.
So she comes home safe and sound. And they asked me if I wanted to continue working with them on cold cases, and I said sure.
More cheeseburgers for you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's exactly what I got out of it too. I got In and Out, and there's another great place over there.
And they gave her stickers. That was the most
important.
Oh
my gosh!
Yeah, I got hats and a water bottle. Oh,
all kinds of police swag.
Pretty cool.
She's a cheap date.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, you could have taken the city for a few dollars there, I think, but that's okay. You're a good person.
It's interesting too. Well, I refuse to charge money for anything that has to do with this, because to me it's not an exact science. I don't know if I'm telling you something correctly or not.
Right.
And I'm not going to tell you, oh, there's this mean spirit, and if you give me $400, I'll get rid of it for you. If anybody ever says that to you, run away. But working with the police department was great. When I first met everybody in the investigation unit, they were all great. They were all a little bit skeptical.
Okay, that was my question to you.
Exactly. We were sitting around at the Starbucks, and the sergeant said, "Sorry about, so and so. He's not going to be here, and he's a huge skeptic. He doesn't believe in any of this." And I just got this impression in my head, and I said, "Oh, the guy with the injured leg, he's back at the office with his leg propped up right now." And I hadn't been to the office at this point. And he just looked at me wide-eyed and went on his phone and started texting immediately and said, "You need to get over here right now." And a few minutes later, this, giant man walks into Starbucks with a limp. And he said, "So, I heard that I heard you knew about my leg injury. Tell me what the inside of my house looks like." And I described to him in detail what his house looked like. And I said, "You have 2 green armchairs in your living room." And he said, "Everybody has 2 green armchairs in their living room."
Right.
And he asked me what kind of dogs he had. And, this is a guy that stereotypically you'd think he'd have some like German Shepherds or some like, big dogs. And
Right.
I said, "I think you have Pomeranians." And he said, "Yeah."
And from that moment on, he was sold, and he was asking,
Yeah, we did another drive. We did a couple of drives around with him. And
nice.
It was great. Because he was a whole different perspective too, because he had previously worked on a gang unit.
Oh.
So at one point they had actually handed me a binder full of mugshots and said, "Go nuts." And not really, but they were like, "All right, so we've got a few things going on, and these are a few suspects we've been looking at," and it was a big binder full of them. And I'm going through, and I point at one, and I say, "This guy," and I think I used the term creeper or something like that.
Yeah,
I said he's a real creeper or something, and they're like, "Oh, okay." And they take the binder away, and they go off and they do some typing real quick, and they're like, "So there's a guy that's been tagging, and he's suspected for assault, and that that word matched him."
It matched what he was the person was tagging.
Yeah.
And now they have somebody to go check and see.
Yeah.
So he was putting creeper as his tag?
Yeah.
Oh,
like
crazy. Yeah. That's amazing.
They were just looking for leads to start investigating because they had lots of dead cases, dead ends.
Oh,
and
they had,
what was I thought was the most hilarious thing is when she said that she had told one of the detectives that this one associate, one friend of the girl that was missing knew more than she was telling, and she just wasn't talking. They went out and they picked her up and they took her into an interrogation room, and he stuck his head out and he says, "We made her cry." And anyhow, he goes back in there to interrogate her, and the other 2 detectives in the office, we're sitting here and it's dead quiet, and they go reach under their desk, both of them at the same time, reach under their desk and pull out these white banker boxes. And both of them, "No, me first. And they shove them in front of her, and they're all their cold cases.
Fix mine.
What about this one?
I think I got to look at a few of those, and there were quite a few cold cases that I got to, take a little gander at, and hopefully, I don't know if anything that I was able to tell them was anything helpful or something that they didn't know, because I told them specifically, don't give me too much information, because I don't want to come up with things on my own. Like, I don't want to project.
Right.
I want this all to be natural. I want this to, come from whatever super brain powers I have. And, one of them I was looking at, and I told them, "Did this guy have a caretaker?" And they said, "Yeah, he did." I said, "Well, I can picture his military ring. And have you seen if perhaps the caretaker might have stolen this military ring?" Because I told them I didn't get a great impression off of that case with something along those lines. And he said, "Oh." And, he went off and started looking into that as well. But then they gave me probably the case that I wanted, that I really stuck with was it was a cold case from the 80s. and it was a 3-year-old child who the mom had been brutally raped and left for dead. And when she woke up, her 3-year-old son wasn't there anymore.
Oh, jeez.
And so when paper charts moved to digital and between all of that, and because of the time, his whole case was gone. They couldn't find, the officers in the 80s did not file the paperwork correctly, or any investigations that they did.
Yeah.
And, and it was really bad. They found some random pictures at the precinct. They found some random pictures, and they said, we think these are part of this case. Can you look at them and tell us, what you think? And I told them, yes, this is definitely. And they found body parts, and they didn't write where they went.
It was very frustrating for me coming from the analytical side, because they brought out this folder, and here's a picture of
a child's
skull sitting on a garden table in the back of somebody's house that they found. We recognized the area that it was found in, and it was a poor family. And then, the missing kid was a child of a poor family, and they found all these bones out in that same area, and they said, well, this could be part of that investigation, but we don't know because nobody marked anything. They just treated it like it was nothing.
Wow.
And so I took the pictures and I did the forensics on them.
Really?
I determined, I showed them why the pictures of the bones were just animal bones.
Yeah, some of them were just raccoons.
They were raccoons and things like that. They had claws and stuff that, obviously not human, but the skull was definitely human. And so I did what I could do about identifying whether it was an adult or a female or whatever, because it's a really old picture. But best we could do is we could figure that it was a child's skull of about that age.
Yeah.
And they were very appreciative that we just went that far with it. No credentials or anything. I could tell them why this is the way it is. And
it's a cold case, so they're not getting any funding or anything from the state or anything to push this further.
Crazy.
So this is more of a passion project for them to solve this crime. I ended up getting to meet the mom who had moved away to like Missouri, I think, and she came and she met me, and I talked to her a little bit, and she was very appreciative that people were still thinking of her son. I think as a psychic, I think that that's the biggest impact that we can make on people is remembering people that are gone and making them real.
Well, giving a crap.
So,
I mean,
giving, exactly. And
she didn't get any closure really, but
she didn't.
She
not much. But you know what they did? Not too long ago, they did arrest a guy for a serial killer that was in the area around the time, and his MO did match pretty closely to
his
what
description matched what she described. And but they couldn't really put two and two together
because they don't have the physical evidence because
and they didn't,
the cops in the 80s,
and they didn't have some sort of legal reason they could not take DNA from him.
Yeah.
And if they had, it would have taken months because it's not an active case. And they, there are all these little bureaucratic things that they couldn't link him to it, but they're pretty sure he's a really high possibility.
Yeah. So that's one of the
cases
already
in jail.
It'll stick with me forever.
Yeah.
But after that they sent me a few little things here and there, and then I started working full time and I stopped being able to help out as much. But
cheeseburgers just only go so far.
yeah.
Keep in touch with some of
them, yeah.
some of the detectives.
Oh,
And
that's
they're
good.
all great. And they're all very passionate about, helping people. And I really appreciate that about them specifically.
Yeah.
But so working on a missing persons case was huge for me.
We'll have more with Vikki and Ken Franklin on the next episode of Paranormal Insight. Thank you for watching and listening. Please click the subscribe button and activate notifications for future episodes and other content. On Spotify, please don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. If you have a paranormal experience that you would like to discuss on the show, please email us at paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com. That's paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook and Instagram under paranormal.insight.podcast